Monica stared at the emerald green dress hanging on her closet door, the dress she'd bought for a wedding she'd never attend. Her hands trembled as she fastened her pearl earrings. In the mirror's reflection, she could see Marcus standing in the doorway, and something in his expression made her blood run cold. "We need to talk," he said. 4 words. That's all it took to detonate a life. But to understand how Monica got here, 41 years old about to watch her marriage crumble, we need to go back. Back to when she still believed that anxiety was just her imagination, that love was supposed to feel uncertain, that being chosen mattered more than choosing herself. Monica had always known something about herself she couldn't shake. Her therapist had given it a name: anxious attachment. That persistent whisper asking, "Am I enough? Will he leave?" Even after 11 years of marriage, that whisper had never quieted. She remembered meeting Marcus like it was yesterday. Law school first year, drowning in case studies. And then him, 6'4", muscles carved from years in the NFL, the kind of man who turned heads everywhere. He'd just retired from professional football, his body still bearing the evidence of athletic glory. And somehow, impossibly, he'd chosen her. But even then, she'd been the one planning their dates, texting first, initiating their intimate moments. He's just going through a transition, she'd told herself, pushing down that anxious flutter. It doesn't mean anything. Marcus supported her through law school, emotionally and financially. His NFL earnings helped with rent while she studied 16-hour days. After she graduated and landed her position at a prestigious firm, the tables turned. Marcus wanted to become an accountant, but his savings had dwindled. So Monica became the breadwinner, supporting them both while he went back to school. They'd talked about children. Monica had always wanted them, but the timing never seemed right. Always something pushing that dream further down the road. By year 8, Marcus had started his own accounting practice, and it had taken off. Suddenly, he was working 70-hour weeks, traveling constantly, building an empire Monica could only observe from outside. That's when the signs started appearing. Password-protected phone, client confidentiality, coming home smelling a perfume that wasn't hers, unexplained charges for dinners at restaurants they'd never been to, hotel rooms in cities where he claimed to be staying with clients, late-night texts he'd take in another room, the way he'd angle his laptop away from her. Her anxious attachment went into overdrive. She found herself checking his location, hating herself for it, but unable to stop. The intimacy between them had become almost non-existent, and Monica was always the one to initiate. At 41, Monica felt time slipping away. Her dream of motherhood dimmed with each passing month, and the man she'd built her life around felt like a stranger. The wedding invitation arrived in early spring. Monica bought that emerald dress, convinced herself this trip might help them reconnect. She was fastening her earrings when Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression resolved. "I want a divorce," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a while." "Is there someone else?" Monica heard herself ask. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. Just looked at her with something like pity and said, "This isn't about anyone else." But Monica knew. She knew in the way he wouldn't meet her eyes, in the way his lack of denial was telling enough. Within 6 months, Monica found herself living alone in a modern apartment downtown. 41 years old, childless, starting over. For 2 months, she existed in a fog. Work, home, takeout, Netflix, repeat. Her apartment became a prison. Lauren finally staged an intervention. "Come to the gym with me, just try it." The gym became Monica's sanctuary. She started going almost daily, focusing on movement rather than the endless loop of thoughts about what she could have done differently. She noticed Damien on her 3rd week. Tall, sculpted, devastatingly handsome, perhaps the most attractive man she'd ever seen. When he approached her, his attention felt like oxygen after drowning. "I've seen you in here," he said, his smile devastating. "You've got great form on those deadlifts." They talked for 40 minutes. He was charming, attentive. When he asked for her number, she gave it without hesitation, ignoring the small voice that whispered it was too soon. Their first date was magical. Damien told her she looked stunning, seemed impressed by her accomplishments. "I can't believe someone as amazing as you is single," he said. After years of feeling invisible to Marcus, Damien's attention felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. They saw each other 3 times that first week. He was affectionate in ways Marcus never was, always touching her, telling her she was beautiful. When they were intimate, sooner than Monica had planned, he made her feel desired in a way that was intoxicating. "I've never met anyone like you," he whispered. "You're different from every other woman." Monica let herself fall, fast and hard, ignoring every instinct that told her to slow down. The second dinner was when the first crack appeared. When the bill came, Damien's card was declined. "My bank must have flagged it for fraud," he said, embarrassed. "They've been doing that with my business expenses." Monica reached for her purse. "I've got it." He sent flowers the next morning. "You're 1 in a million." Then there was the phone call during their next date. When he returned, troubled. "Just my ex. She's being difficult." He reached for her hand. "I should have mentioned it before. I have a daughter. She's 5. I was scared you'd run, but you're different, Monica. You're not like other women." A daughter he'd never mentioned. Monica felt something shift, but his eyes were so earnest. "I'm glad you told me," she heard herself say. Within a month, Damien had a key to her apartment. Within 2 months, his presence filled her space, pushing out the loneliness, but other things started appearing too. His baby's mother, Shayla, calling at all hours. Damien needing rides because his car was always having issues. Needing money because deals were delayed. Needing Monica to watch Maya because Shayla was difficult. Between these requests came other moments when his charm would transform into something else. "Why are you dressed like that?" he asked when she wore a fitted dress. "It's a little much. You're not in your 20s anymore. You could stand to lose a few pounds before wearing something that tight." She'd changed into jeans and a loose sweater, her confidence deflating. When she returned, he smiled and pulled her close. "Much better. You look perfect." The compliment and criticism were so tangled Monica couldn't separate them. There were times when he'd be attentive and loving, then disappear for days with barely a text. When she'd try to talk about it, he'd turn it around. "You're being clingy. I thought you were different, but you're just like every other woman." She'd apologize, though unsure what for. And he'd soften, tell her she meant everything to him. Her work began to suffer. Monica found herself distracted in meetings, checking her phone obsessively for his messages. "You need to leave him," Lauren said bluntly. "This guy is using you." "You don't understand. He's been through a lot. He just needs support." "And when does he support you?" Monica made an excuse and left, driving home to wait for Damien, who didn't show up until midnight with another excuse. The breaking point came 4 months in. Monica came home from a brutal workday to find Damien on her couch with Shayla. "Shayla's apartment flooded," Damien said casually. "She and Maya need a place to stay. You don't mind, right?" In her bedroom, Monica finally felt something crack. "You invited your ex to stay without asking me." "Don't be selfish." "Maya needs a place to sleep. This is my home." "Maybe I was wrong about you." Before me, you were just some divorced woman crying into her wine. I gave you purpose again, and this is how you thank me? The words hit every insecurity. He softened, pulled her close. You're right. I should have asked. That's why I love you. Love. In 4 months, the first time. And Monica hated how desperately she needed to hear it. Shayla stayed for a week. Monica found herself feeling like a stranger in her own life. When she tried to talk to Damien, he accused her of being jealous, said if she couldn't trust him, maybe they shouldn't be together. That night, alone in her bathroom, Monica looked at herself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. When had she stopped being herself? Unable to sleep, she picked up her phone and searched. Why do I keep choosing men who don't value me? Dating too soon after divorce? At 2 a.m., she found a video by relationship coach MJ Harris. Stop dating your trauma. You're not healing if you're hiding in someone else, MJ Harris said. You're just postponing the work you need to do on yourself. Monica watched video after video until sunrise. She learned about love bombing, about manipulation, about how her anxious attachment made her vulnerable. She learned that she'd rushed into things with Damien because being chosen by someone attractive made her feel like she had value after Marcus left. But most importantly, she learned that she deserved better, that no man should make her feel small or grateful just to be chosen. When she emerged from the bathroom, something had shifted. I need everyone to leave, she said quietly but firmly. Damien went through his playbook: anger, guilt, manipulation. After everything I've done for you, you're self-sabotaging. That's why your marriage failed. For the first time, none of it landed. I need you to leave. All of you. Today. He tried for 30 minutes to change her mind, but Monica held firm. When they finally left, the silence was deafening. Monica sat on her couch and cried, not for Damien, but for herself, for the woman she'd lost, for the lessons she'd had to learn the hard way. The next few weeks were the hardest of her life. Damien's attempts to contact her became increasingly desperate, then angry. With Lauren's help and a therapist, she cut off all contact. In that silence, Monica began the real work of healing. She threw herself into therapy twice a week. She watched every MJ Harris video. She read books about attachment, about why women sometimes choose partners who hurt them. She realized her father's emotional distance had primed her to seek approval from unavailable men. She realized she'd never truly been alone, jumping from relationship to relationship, never discovering who she was outside of being someone's partner. Most painful of all, she realized she'd been so grateful to be wanted that she'd ignored every red flag. At work, Monica started setting boundaries. When her senior partner expected her to work through the weekend, she said no for the first time. Her managing partner looked at her thoughtfully. You know what, Monica? I wish I'd had your courage at your age. That conversation sparked something. Monica started questioning every area where she'd been giving more than she wanted, saying yes when she meant no. She spent her life achieving what she thought she was supposed to achieve. She never asked herself what she actually wanted. The answer surprised her. She wanted freedom. She wanted to travel. She wanted to build something of her own. 6 months after ending things with Damien, Monica gave her notice. I'm starting my own practice. I want to focus on family law, helping women navigate divorce. She also decided to work remotely and travel. I've spent 41 years living the life I thought I was supposed to want, she told Lauren. I'm going to live the life I actually want. She bought a one-way ticket to Cape Town, South Africa. Cape Town took her breath away. She rented an apartment in Sea Point with ocean views, spent mornings working with clients, afternoons exploring. For the first time, Monica was truly alone. Not lonely, but alone. She ate dinner by herself without feeling self-conscious. She spent weekends reading on her balcony, existing in her own company without needing validation. She'd been there 2 months when she met Jonathan at a coffee shop. He was older by a few years, with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair. Not what she'd typically considered her type. Perhaps 5'10", solidly built but not muscular. "First time in Cape Town?" he asked. They talked for an hour. He listened more than he spoke, asked questions that showed he remembered details. He never made her feel like he was trying to impress her. When he finally asked her to dinner weeks later, it felt natural. "There's a restaurant I think you'd enjoy." No pressure, just dinner. Monica almost said no. Her commitment to staying single was still fresh. But something about Jonathan felt different. I liked that. Dinner was easy in a way she'd never experienced. "I was divorced 5 years ago," he shared. "Took me about 3 years to be ready to date. Sometimes healing takes longer than we want." "What made you ready?" "I stopped looking for someone to complete me and started being complete on my own." Monica found herself telling him about Marcus, about Damien, about her journey. Jonathan didn't judge. "We all have our growing to do. The question isn't whether we've made mistakes, it's whether we've learned from them." At her door, he didn't try to kiss her or angle for an invitation up. "I'd like to see you again, but only if that's what you want." Their relationship unfolded slowly. Jonathan traveled frequently for work. When gone, he'd text occasionally, but not constantly. When in Cape Town, they'd see each other a few times a week. They cooked dinner together, went for walks, had lazy Sundays reading in comfortable silence. Monica watched herself carefully, checking her anxious patterns. When Jonathan didn't text for a day, her new self recognized it as just him being busy, healthy and normal. "How's Jonathan?" her therapist asked. "It's different. It feels easy, not like there's no effort, but like we're not constantly manufacturing connection. He shows up consistently. He follows through. When he says he'll call, he calls. And his height?" Monica laughed. "I don't even think about it. At first I noticed he wasn't as tall as men I dated. But now I just see Jonathan. I see how he treats waitstaff with kindness, how he talks about his daughter with love, how he's patient when I'm working through anxious moments. That's attractive in a way height never was." 3 months in, Jonathan invited her to meet his daughter, Emma. "She knows we're dating, that we're seeing where it goes. No pressure. Just 3 people having lunch." The clarity was refreshing. Emma was sweet. The lunch was pleasant without being forced. Afterward, Emma hugged Monica. "You make my dad smile a lot." 6 months after meeting Jonathan, Monica realized she wasn't anxious. She wasn't questioning whether he liked her. She was simply present, enjoying what was. "I'm falling in love with him," she told Lauren. "You think or you know?" "I know, but it's different. This feels steady, peaceful." Jonathan's company offered him a promotion based in Cape Town permanently. Before accepting, he wanted to talk. "I've been offered a role that would keep me here," he said. "But I need to know if you're planning to stay. Because Monica, I'm in love with you. I want to build something real, but only if that's what you want too." "I love you too," Monica said. "And I've been thinking about making Cape Town permanent. But Jonathan, I need you to know, I'm not the same woman I was. I've worked hard to become someone who knows her worth, who has boundaries, who won't lose herself. I don't want you to lose yourself. I fell in love with exactly who you are, independent, strong, building your own life. I want to be part of your world while you're part of mine." They talked for hours about what a future together might look like. Maintaining separate apartments at first, Monica's need for independence, supporting each other without consuming each other. It was the most adult conversation about a relationship Monica had ever had. No grand declarations, they couldn't live without each other. Just two people who'd been broken by love before, carefully choosing to try again, wiser this time. A year after arriving in Cape Town, Monica stood on her balcony. Her practice had grown beyond imagination. She was supporting women through divorce with both legal expertise and hard-won wisdom. She started a blog sharing her lessons, and it had resonated with thousands of women. Jonathan had accepted the position. They were building something solid, spending 3 or 4 nights a week together, maintaining their own spaces, supporting each other's independence while being genuinely there for each other. But most importantly, Monica had built a relationship with herself that didn't depend on anyone's validation. She'd learned to sit with her anxious attachment, to recognize it as old programming rather than truth. She'd learned that being alone didn't mean being lonely, and being in a relationship didn't mean being complete. She'd learned that the most attractive qualities weren't height or looks or charm, but consistency, integrity, and showing up emotionally. She'd learned that real love didn't feel like the roller coaster with Damien, but rather like the steady ground Jonathan provided. Most of all, Monica had learned she was enough. Not because a man told her so, not because she'd achieved certain milestones. She was enough simply because she existed, because she'd survived, because she'd had the courage to look at her patterns honestly and change them. One evening, as she sat with Jonathan, watching the sunset, her phone buzzed with a message from a new client whose story sounded familiar. Rushed into a relationship after divorce, ignored red flags. Monica called her. "I know you feel lost right now," she said gently. "I know you're wondering how you got here. What's wrong with you?" But nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just healing. And sometimes when we're vulnerable, we make choices from our wounds instead of our wisdom. But you can change this, and I'm going to help you. After the call, Monica reflected on her journey. 2 years ago, she thought her life was over at 41. She thought she'd wasted her youth, that she was too old to start over. Now, at 43, Monica understood that her life hadn't been wasted. Every experience, even the painful ones, had been necessary. Marcus had taught her that a beautiful exterior couldn't compensate for emotional unavailability. Damien had taught her what happens when you seek validation from the wrong sources while vulnerable. Her year alone had taught her how to stand on her own feet. And Jonathan was teaching her what healthy love could look like when two whole people chose each other. She thought about all the women where she'd been, ending marriages, questioning themselves, rushing into the arms of men who saw their vulnerability as opportunity. She wanted them to know that healing wasn't linear, that making mistakes didn't mean failing, that their anxious attachment could be healed, their patterns changed, their worth not determined by who chose them. She wanted them to know that good men existed, men who didn't love bomb but loved steadily, who didn't rush intimacy but built it gradually, who didn't make you feel grateful for their attention but grateful for the opportunity to know you. Men who'd done their own healing work. But most importantly, she wanted them to know that you couldn't find that good man until you'd first found yourself. All the work she'd done, the therapy, the self-reflection, the year alone, the boundaries, hadn't been obstacles to finding love, but the foundation that made healthy love possible. As Monica returned to the balcony where Jonathan waited, she carried with her the profound truth of her journey. Sometimes the longest way around is the shortest way home. And sometimes you have to lose yourself completely to find out who you truly are. "Everything okay?" Jonathan asked, making space for her. "Everything's perfect," Monica said, and she meant it. Not perfect in the fairy tale sense, but perfect in the way real life is perfect. Messy and beautiful, difficult and rewarding. She spent years chasing what happiness should look like. The successful career, the attractive husband, the perfect timeline. She'd measured herself against society's standards and found herself perpetually falling short. Now she understood that happiness wasn't a destination. It was a practice, a daily choice to honor yourself, to recognize your worth, to choose people and situations that aligned with your values. It was the courage to be alone rather than with the wrong person. It was the wisdom to move slowly rather than rush into intensity. It was the strength to leave what wasn't serving you, even when leaving felt harder than staying. Monica's story didn't end with finding Jonathan, though his presence was a gift she cherished. Her story ended with finding herself. The woman who'd been buried under years of anxious attachment, people-pleasing, and seeking external validation. The woman who'd always been there but had forgotten how to listen to her own voice. That woman was strong, capable, worthy, and whole. She was a successful attorney who'd built a practice helping other women find their power. She was a traveler who'd had the courage to leave behind everything comfortable to discover who she could be. She was a partner who'd learned to love without losing herself. She was a woman who'd looked at her deepest wounds and done the painful work of healing them. And perhaps most remarkably, she was a woman who learned that arriving at 41, divorced and starting over, wasn't the end of her story, but the beginning of the most authentic chapter she'd ever written. As the Cape Town sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Monica understood that her journey hadn't been about finding the right person. Not Marcus, not Damien, not even Jonathan. It had been about becoming the right person, about healing her attachment wounds, understanding her patterns, learning to value herself, not for what she could do for others, but for who she was in her own eyes. The woman she'd become could recognize love bombing for what it was. She could identify manipulation before it took root. She could see her own worth without needing a man's attention to confirm it. She could walk away from situations that diminished her, even when walking away was lonely. She could move slowly into relationships, testing compatibility rather than rushing into intensity. She could set boundaries without apologizing for them. She could ask for what she needed without feeling like a burden. She could challenge behavior that didn't align with her values without fear of abandonment. And perhaps most importantly, she could be alone without feeling incomplete. These weren't easy lessons. They'd come at the cost of a marriage that had consumed 11 years of her life. They'd come through the pain of being used by someone who targeted her vulnerability. They'd come through lonely nights, questioning every choice she'd ever made. They'd come through the hard work of therapy, self-reflection, and having the courage to change patterns that had been with her since childhood. But they'd been worth it. Every tear, every moment of doubt, every difficult realization, all of it had been necessary to break the cycles that would have kept her trapped in unfulfilling relationships for the rest of her life. Monica thought about the women who'd follow similar paths, who'd end marriages and wonder if they'd wasted their best years, who'd rush into new relationships seeking validation, who'd ignore red flags because the attention felt so good after feeling invisible. She thought about the women who had anxious attachment styles like hers, who'd spend their whole lives seeking reassurance from people who couldn't give it. She wanted them to know, slow down, heal first, learn to be alone, discover who you are outside of being someone's partner, understand your attachment patterns, recognize red flags, value yourself enough to walk away from people who diminish you no matter how attractive they are, no matter how good the attention feels in the moment. She wanted them to know that good men don't love bomb. They build connection gradually. Good men don't isolate you from friends and family. They encourage your independence. Good men don't criticize your appearance or tear at your insecurities. They appreciate who you are. Good men don't make you feel lucky to be chosen. They feel lucky to know you. She wanted them to know that being single in your 40s isn't a tragedy. It's an opportunity. That starting over isn't failing. It's having the courage to choose yourself. That leaving what's familiar for something unknown isn't reckless, it's brave. Most of all, she wanted them to know that healing is possible, that patterns can change, that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. As stars began appearing in the darkening Cape Town sky, Monica leaned into Jonathan's solid presence beside her, grateful for his steadiness, but no longer dependent on it for her sense of self. She learned the most important lesson of all, that love was sweetest when it was a choice rather than a need, when it enhanced your life rather than defined it, when it was built on the foundation of two whole people rather than two halves desperately seeking completion. Her journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more growth, more lessons to learn, but she was ready for them now in a way she'd never been before. Not as someone looking for a man to save her, but as a woman who'd learned to save herself. She thought about that woman in the emerald green dress, the one standing in her bedroom while her marriage crumbled around her. She thought about how terrified that woman had been, how lost, how convinced that her life was ending at 41. If she could go back and tell that woman anything, it would be this: your life isn't ending, it's beginning. The pain you're about to experience will be the catalyst for the most profound transformation you've ever known. You will make mistakes, you'll rush into something with the wrong person because you're desperate to feel wanted again, but even that mistake will teach you what you need to learn. You will emerge from this fire not burned, but refined. And on the other side of all this pain, you will find yourself. And that woman, the one you've been all along but couldn't see, she is extraordinary. Monica smiled, watching the last light fade from the sky, replaced by stars that had been there all along, just waiting for darkness to reveal them. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what really matters. Sometimes you have to break completely to rebuild stronger. Sometimes the ending you fear most is actually the beginning you need. And sometimes the greatest love story isn't about finding the right person. It's about finding yourself. Monica had spent her life being chosen. By Marcus, who chose her but never truly saw her. By Damien, who chose her because he saw her as someone to use. And finally, by Jonathan, who chose her and actually valued what he found. But the most important choice wasn't any of theirs. It was hers. The choice to finally, after 41 years, choose herself. To choose healing over hiding. To choose growth over comfort. To choose authenticity over acceptance. To choose her own voice over anyone else's approval. That choice, the one she made in her bathroom at 2 a.m. while watching MJ Harris videos, the one she made when she told Damien to leave, the one she made when she boarded that plane to Cape Town, that choice had changed everything. Because when you choose yourself, when you really choose yourself, everything else falls into place. Not perfectly, not without difficulty, but with an alignment that feels right in your bones, in your soul, in the quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts and you realize you actually like your own company. Monica had learned that you can't love someone else in a healthy way until you love yourself. That you can't set boundaries with others until you learn to honor your own needs. That you can't recognize manipulation until you understand your own patterns. That you can't build something real with someone else until you've built something real within yourself. The journey from that bedroom in her old house to this balcony in Cape Town hadn't been a straight line. It had been messy, painful, full of wrong turns and hard lessons. But it had been hers. Every step, every mistake, every moment of growth, all of it had been necessary. As Monica stood up to go inside, Jonathan reached for her hand. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For doing the work. For showing up as someone who knows herself, who has boundaries, who can receive love without losing herself in it. It makes loving you easy." Monica squeezed his hand, feeling tears prick her eyes. Not sad tears, grateful tears. Because she understood now what she hadn't understood with Marcus, what she couldn't have understood with Damien. Love should feel easy, not effortless. Relationships required work, communication, compromise. but easy in the sense that you weren't constantly fighting for validation, constantly managing someone else's emotions, constantly wondering if you were enough. With the right person, after you'd done the work on yourself, love could feel like coming home. But the home wasn't the other person. The home was yourself. The other person was just someone you invited to sit with you on the porch and watch the sunset. Someone who respected your space while sharing their own, someone who added to your life rather than completing it. That night, as Monica fell asleep in her own apartment, the one with ocean views and space for her home office and furniture she'd chosen just for herself, she thought about all the women out there who were where she'd been, women who were getting divorced and feeling like failures, women who were rushing into new relationships to avoid feeling the pain of old ones, women who were giving themselves away piece by piece to men who saw them as resources rather than as people worthy of love. She thought about the blog posts she'd write, the clients she'd help, the coaching sessions she'd lead. She thought about all the ways she could take her pain and transform it into purpose, her lessons into wisdom she could share. Because that's what healing does. It doesn't just change you, it equips you to help others. Your wounds become your wisdom, your struggles become your strength, your story becomes someone else's survival guide. Monica had lived through a marriage that ended in betrayal. She'd rushed into a relationship with a man who manipulated her vulnerability. She lost herself so completely that she almost forgot there was a self to find. But she'd done the work. She faced her patterns, healed her wounds, built boundaries, learned her worth. And now on the other side of all that pain, she was exactly where she needed to be. Not because she'd found the perfect life or the perfect partner, but because she'd found herself. And that made everything else possible. As sleep pulled her under, Monica's last thought was this: at 41, I thought my life was over. At 43, I'm just beginning. And if I can do this, if I can transform this much pain into this much growth, then any woman can. You just have to be willing to do the work. You just have to be willing to choose yourself. The emerald green dress still hung in her closet back in storage, a reminder of the day everything fell apart. Monica had kept it, not out of nostalgia for her marriage, but as a symbol of transformation. That dress had been meant for a wedding she never attended, worn by a woman who no longer existed. Now it represented the funeral of who she'd been and the birth of who she'd become. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is the worst thing that can happen to you. Sometimes the ending you dread is actually the liberation you need. Sometimes you have to lose everything to gain yourself. And that, Monica understood now, was the whole point.